So what you're looking at right now is my first game that I made in 14 days, but before we get more into that, let's go to how it all started. So I joined the Pirate Software Game Jam 14.
Hey, look, it started. Submissions due in 14 days, 11 hours, 59 minutes. Are you ready, Chet? Are you ready for the vote?
So we got together and both chats narrowed down the categories, and the final category ended up being it's spreading. So I got together with my team. We started to all come up with 2 to 3 ideas. We had an idea for a platformer as well as kind of an RTS planet sort of alien spreading game. We got in a Discord call for honestly a couple hours, and we ended up choosing a puzzle game that would have infected blocks that would spread as the player played. This game was inspired by Wario Woods. I played that game as a kid, and so I got started making the blocks right away while my teammate worked on the code to make those blocks fall. So we had a good base to get started from. While he was continuing to work on the code, I decided to do the character art for our main player. We decided on a character wearing a hazmat suit. So I opened up Godot and started playing with the collision shapes for our character sprite, and I put him in the game and he just fell to his death. So obviously something isn't working correctly. So I played around a little more with the collisions for the area for the ground, and after I got that set up, our player was able to walk on the ground. However, his interaction with the blocks still wasn't quite right. He was able to collide with the base of the blocks, but nothing else. So I did a little code using the character body 2D node that's built into Godot, and I was able to implement some collision with the blocks. However, if a block fell on the character, he would just sink down. So I played a little bit to try to implement a way that the character could climb up the walls, as the character does in Wario Woods. So after I implemented that logic, our character sprite was able to climb the blocks. Although there was a weird effect where he would carry his momentum over the blocks, and it would kind of introduce this phenomenon. Look at the smile on my face. And this is why game dev is so fun, for moments like these. I decided to go against using the character body 2D node and instead use the area 2D to implement our own physics. The reason we did that is because I decided that it might be easier to just manually code all of the collisions as well as the climbing for our character. So I got collisions working again. I decided to take a break from that and use Sprite for the first time. I had never used the program and I needed to make some tile maps. Our main character was 2D or hand drawn. But since our canvas for the game was so small, the main character ended up just looking pixelated anyway. So I decided to just make the tile map be in pixel art. And so I watched a couple of tutorials on making tile maps. I had never done one before. I ended up actually really enjoying Sprite. It's a really cool program. And so I ended up making just a few little objects that could give a little more character to the background, as well as finished up the tile map. So after I finished the tile map, I decided to go work on the character controller again. I was able to get the blocks to stack up on the player and move with the player. And then the next thing I worked on was the ability to throw those blocks down. And when 3 or more blocks connect, those blocks disappear. Or the next thing I did was design the infected blocks in Sprite and give them a little animation. Now when an infected block is placed on the stage, it will begin to spread. So the player wants to prioritize those blocks first. We did end up having a glitch that the blocks would spread way too quickly. They're only supposed to spread to their neighbor one at a time. So after that, I wanted to code the ability to pick up blocks from beneath you. And instead I got this. And we are not doing a digging game. So this is not what we want. So I ended up going into the code to fix that logic. So now I'm able to pick up the blocks underneath, and we still have the ability to throw those blocks. although the character still could climb with the blocks. Now, we could have left in this feature to climb with the blocks, but we decided not to have this as an ability. So I made it so the character could not climb with blocks, and we ended up fixing our spreading. So as you can see, they're just spreading one at a time. But as you get more infected blocks, the spreading increases. So after I had things working more correctly, I decided to go back to the tile maps and use the tile map editor to give our game a more interesting background. I still needed to make some adjustments to the block placing on the bottom of the stage, and as you can see, there was some weird issues when blocks got cleared, but you know, this is a game jam and those things happen. I implemented a effect that when a player goes on the block, it would flash red from the screen to discourage a player to stay on those. And eventually we would do a health system that the player would take damage when they're on top of a block. So after that, we had the game in a pretty good state. Things were working more or less the way we wanted them to. So after that, I decided to go back and do some art to give our character a few more different states. So one is when the character picks up a block, and then I decided to make a rough, and I emphasize rough, very rough walk cycle. So I went back into Clip Studio and made a few modifications to the original sprite of the character to be able to implement a walk cycle. So once I had all the frames for the walk cycle, I got something working. It's very choppy, but for the game jam it'll do with the time that we had remaining. So in the game it doesn't look too bad. Player looks a lot better when he picks up blocks and when he moves his legs as he climbs and walks around. So at that point the game was in a pretty good state. We kind of ran out of time and we had to hurry and finish our game design doc. So here's the game. We have a score implemented, as well as the player loses HP when they step on a block. And when all your HP runs out, then the game finishes. So the goal of this game is to get the highest score you can before you die. So we had to hurry and submit the game. We had run out of time. You can actually go to itch.io and play the game right now. I'll link it below in the description. It's a web game, so you can play it right in your browser, or you can download one to run on your computer. And then after that, I spent a while playing some of the games submitted by the community. There were some really cool games, and I was really impressed with what people were able to do in such a short amount of time. It made me realize that I've got a long way to go on my journey of game dev to get more efficient with using Godot, to learn how to work better with teammates. But I did learn that I really do enjoy game jams. I always wanted to do one, but I was worried that I wouldn't have time. Since I have a full-time job, a family, there's just not a lot of time. But I learned that even with doing a little bit towards the end of the night, 9 p.m., I got a couple of hours before I go to bed. If I just kept up with that and I was consistent, I was actually able to do more than I thought I could. So I was really glad I participated in this game jam. That's all for this video. I plan on returning to my devlog videos that I was doing before, as well as doing an occasional tutorial video for Godot. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you for the next one. Thanks.